Greetings everyone, I'm Kevin, and here's how my reading was in 2021. So 2021 was a very special reading month. I read in total 188 books, and we're going to see how the stats look for 2021. So the first thing is languages. So out of the 188 books that I read, this is what it looks like over the year, so all the months. Blue is English, yellow is Swedish, and red is German. So I read in total 163 books in English, 17 books in Swedish, and 4 books in German. I really want that number to go up. I want to read more books in German, and I would love to see 10 books for Germany and 20 books for Sweden, and then English be whatever it is, but 20 books for Swedish, 10 books for German. I would be very happy if that happens in 2022. Then we have the genres that I read in a month. So blue is fantasy, yellow is literary fiction, pink is historical fiction, red is romance, green is science fiction, orange is paranormal, and gray is other, because I didn't have time to go through all the genres. But as you can see, there's kind of a very nice variety in the first few months until you go to April, when literary fiction dominated. The same for May, and then it was a little more varied again until December, where I clearly read a lot of romance. So in total, I read 27 fantasies, 54 literary fiction, 18 historical fiction, 61 romance books, 27 science fiction books, and 11 paranormal. It's very clear that romance was the genre that I read the absolute most of. And the genre in second place, with 7 books less than romance, is literary fiction, which kind of surprised me. But now that I think of it, it didn't really surprise me. But romance number 1, literary fiction number 2, and then we have science fiction and fantasy at 27 each. So very even. Then the question is, what kind of romance did I read? Because it was the genre that I read the most of, but was it diverse enough? So it looks like this. I read 25 queer books, 35 straight books, 23 Asian books, 6 black, and 31 white. And I should say that the way that I categorize this is, if one person is queer, I count it as a queer couple, meaning a queer romance. Even if it's a girl and a boy, if the girl is bi, then I count it as queer. And so for straight, it is 2 people who identify as straight, and for queer, it's at least one person identifying as queer. That includes trans people and non-binary people. And for Asian, it doesn't have to be both are Asian, but at least one of them is Asian. Same goes for black. If at least one person is black, that counts. And for white, I count only if both are white, because if one of them is black, I count it as black instead of white. And I am not happy with how this pie chart looks, because I do like that it's kind of in quarters, apart from black is not a quarter. And I would love white and straight to be a little bit smaller, but I do like that queer and Asian are half of this pie chart is queer and Asian, which I like. But I would love for it to be black to be a bigger part of this pie. And the reason I decided to go with these 5 and not, Latinx, disability, romance and stuff like that, is because there weren't enough of those that I felt they would barely be visible on a pie chart. So that's why I went with the 5 most common ones. So it's these 5. But I would love to see straight being a little bit smaller, white be a little bit smaller, black be a little bit bigger. And hopefully add disabled as well. I think that would be really nice. Then let's go to ratings in a month. So one star is blue, which I'm very happy that you can only see it once, which is March. Yellow is 2 stars. There are a few more yellow squares here, but it's better than 1 star at least, but still not happy about that. Pink is 3 stars in like July. Like what happened July? So many 3 stars. And then red is 4 stars, and I had a lot of 4 stars. It just like look at December, it's almost only like in January, February, July, August, a lot of 4 stars, which is really weird. But then again, a lot of green, which is 5 stars. I didn't go a single month without a 5 star, which is really weird to me. But I'm happy about that, you know? Then we'll look at formats in a month. So blue is if I read the book only as an audiobook. Yellow is if I read it only as an ebook. Pink is only physical. Red is audio and ebook. And green is audio and physical book. I didn't read a single book that was ebook and physical book. That's why it's not an option. And you can see very clearly when I got my e-reader. I got her in the beginning of October, so you can see a lot of yellow or more yellow in October, November, and December, especially December, where I read quite a lot of ebooks. But that's kind of like why it was more, why there are more ebooks at the end of the year instead of like throughout. But you can clearly see that I love reading through audiobook and physical book. I really love having like a physical copy at home to read and to listen to on the way to work and back home again. So like I like having those two because I love reading. I love listening to audiobooks on my way to work and back home. So like when I'm out walking, I love listening to audiobooks. So I love having that option to listen to the same book that I'm reading physically. Then we have one that I was actually very happy with at the end of the day, and it's translated versus original language. And as you can see, there are only 3 months that I didn't read a translated book. Every other month, 9 months of the entire year, I read translated books, especially in December where I started reading manga. So a lot of translated books that way. But I did read quite a few translated books, and that was really nice. Like in total, I read 25 translated books in 1 year, which I think is great. Then we have one that I thought was very interesting, and it's publication year. How many new releases did I read? I decided to separate the publication year in this way, mainly because I realized at first I just wanted it to be 2021, 2020, 2019, the 3 most recent years. Then I realized, oh, I did read some arcs for 2022, so I have to add 2022. And then like, yeah. So for 2022, I read 4 books. In 2021, for books published in 2021, I read 18 books. Books published 2020, I read 47 books. Books published in 2019, I read 30 books. After making this, I was like, maybe I should have done like 2022, 2021, 2020, 2010 until 2019. So we have like that span that I did with the rest of them. But I was like, I read 30 books in 2019. I would have to make this chart look a lot different if I grouped 2019 together with 2010 to 2018. Because in 2010, books published between the year 2010 and 2018 were only 59 books. That would have been 89 books if I added 2019 with it, which like it would have been so different, this chart. Then for 2000 until 2009, I read 10 books, and I read 8 books published between in the 1900s. I read 1 book published in the 1800s, 2 books published in the 1600s, and 2 books published in the 1500s. And the 4 books that were published in the 15 and 1600s are Shakespeare plays. That's why it looks like that. I don't know what book I read that was published in the 1800s. I'm not sure what book that is, but it's just 1 book. Then we'll look at pages in a month, and this was very interesting to me to like visualize. I read in total 54,538 pages in 2022, which is only an average page count of 290 pages, which is not a lot. And it was really interesting to see like in January, in December, and July, I read the most amount of pages, but the average page number is still not a lot. Like 252 was the average page count in December, and I read 6,806 pages. I did read a lot of manga, like that's why. But at least in November, I read 228 as the average page number, which is not a lot. And the highest average page number was in April with 356 of the 5,541 pages that I read. But I really enjoy how this kind of visualizes how I read. Like, it looks like I read a lot. Like, if we divide it according to like 6 months periods, then we have January, April, I read the most of the first 6 months. And then July, December in the last 6 months, which I think is kind of interesting. Then we have the last stats that I will look at, which is book length in pages. So how long were the books that I read? This surprised me a lot. Yeah, it really surprised me. I read 13 books that were less than 100 pages long. I read 29 books that were between 100 and 199 pages long. 42 books between 200 and 299 pages. And I read 61 books between 300 and 399 pages. I read 30 books between 400 and 499 pages. And only 5 books over 500 pages. That shocked me a lot. Like, you can clearly see that I read between 300 and 400 pages was the most common for me in 2021. And then like, it's a big gap until 499. So it's like very, very weird in my opinion. Like, if you would have asked me what I would have guessed the average page count to be for the books that I read in 2021, I would be like 350 maybe, and it's 290. Like 60 pages shorter than I expected it to be. But I have a goal to read more books over 500 pages in 2022. So I really hope that will be the case. Hi, so I'm sorry about the lighting. I realized that I forgot to mention one particular stat, and it's continents visited. At first I thought I was gonna do countries visited, but then it was too tricky. And also, like, for me, it's more interesting to look at continents, because if I read like 2 books for Nigeria, that is still like, that's only 2 books for Nigeria, but maybe I read like a lot more books for Africa. So I thought it would be a lot more interesting to look at continents. So here we have my little chart. So as you can see, North America, I read most of the books for North America, almost half of them, but not quite. In North America, I read 71 books for North America, and only like North America is one of the only ones that I didn't like specify region, because I only read for Canada and the US, so like that's just 2 countries, so like North America. And then I read 50 books for Europe, 13 books for Northern Europe because the Nordic, and 25 books for Western Europe, so mainly the UK and Ireland. Then I read 4 books for Eastern Europe, 7 for Southern Europe, and 2 for Central Europe, which is Germany. Yeah. And then we have at 31 books, we have Asia, and 3 books I read for the Middle East, 25 for East Asia, and 3 books for South Asia. So the majority of the books that I read for Asia were in the East part. So I would love for that to like be a little bit more varied going into 2022, to have more books from the Middle East and South Asia, but also Northern Asia and like Western, like not as far west as the Middle East, but like between the Middle East and South Asia. I think like there's just so much of Asia that I would love to visit in a book. Then we have Africa. I read 6 books for Africa. 4 books were set in West Africa, 2 books were set in North Africa, and 1 book was set in South Africa, or Southern Africa. I mean, it was only in South Africa, the country. And the reason why it's 6 plus 2 plus 1 when I only visited like in 6 books, it's because in 1 book that I read, they were in West Africa and North Africa. So it was those both regions in 1 book. And then the last continent that I visited was Oceania with 4 books. And at first I was like, I'm gonna like separate them, but I visited like both New Zealand and Australia, and I felt like I didn't want to do regions like how can I do regions for North America and Oceania when I only visited 2 countries in the same region? Like, is the US Central North America? Like, that sounds weird. So it's like I visited North America and I visited Oceania instead of like going into specific regions because it's one region. But this is kind of what my continents visited in books looks like. Like, as I mentioned for romance books, that I wanted the black to be a little bit bigger. I would love for this to, I want North America to be a little bit smaller and I want Africa to be bigger. Like, I like how big Asia is, but I want, like, my goal for 2022 is for North America to be like a quarter or more, like a quarter, like maybe a third of what the rest of them are. And Europe can be what it is, but I want Oceania, Asia, and Africa to be a third together. Especially Asia and Africa, I want them to make up 33%, so a third. Like, that's my goal for 2022. To have more books from other places than Europe and North America. That's what I'm aiming for. But yeah, that's all of the stats for my reading year 2021. I hope you enjoyed. Please let me know, like, how did you do? Are there any stats that you think would be kind of fun to look into? I don't really know. Like, this is the first time that I did this. It was very, like, a lot of ways to look at the reading. Like, I don't even know if that makes sense. But thank you so much for watching. Have a good day, and I will see you next time. Good reading. Bye.